So for some Thanksgiving games, just over this really quick. So we have Adam Thielen, for coming up here. And I really don't like playing people on Thursday games. I mean, when is the last time you said, wow, they're playing on Thursday, let me start him? But for fantasy football purposes, I mean, this week is hard to ignore because there's so many Thanksgiving games. I mean, we have, there's so many impactful players and so many just good plays. You have arguably maybe one of the better matchups. You have Tennessee versus the Indianapolis Colts. In Indianapolis, they give up the fifth most fantasy points to running back in standard league. So, how do you not start Demarco Murray? I mean, Demarco Murray in standard league, he's not the most brilliant play. I mean, he's a 17th ranked running back, so you're like, oh, that's an RB2. Well, I mean, first off, that's a low-end RB2, ranked 17. I mean, you want your second, you really want a top 15 guy to be your RB2. But, here's just some stats with DeMarco Murray. Since week 3, he's only had he's had 3 double-digit fantasy point games. And that's what makes DeMarco Murray scary, because look at his double-digit fantasy, and this is in standard league. In PPR, it's going to be more, because DeMarco Murray, one of the things that he does do is catch the ball out of the backfield. That's one thing that DeMarco Murray does, but if you look at DeMarco Murray as a whole, I mean, he averages roughly about 2.8 catches a game, DeMarco Murray. So, I mean, he's going to catch 2 or 3 passes a game. So as a PPR play, DeMarco Murray, I mean, he's not that bad, all right, for a type of back that he is. And he's a complete back. I mean, in Dallas, he was a complete back. He can block. That's why it's kind of weird to see a big back like that being able to stay in today's NFL on third downs. But then you have Derrick Henry. And then we are talking about the Tennessee Titans. 1 week Marcus Mariota looks fantastic. The other, it's like, he got you 8 fantasy points. But when you're looking at certain guys, like, look at DeMarco Murray. I mean, he scored 18 fantasy points, 14.7, and 25.2. So on weeks that you're sitting here going, wow, I should have never started him. I mean, how about week 10 versus Cincinnati when he scored 3 touchdowns and got 25.2 fantasy points? Again, this isn't standard league. In PPR, it would have been much greater. But, I mean, like, so when he does give you double-digit fantasy points, it's not like he just gets you 10 or 11. His lowest double-digit fantasy point game was 14.7 in standard league. So, I mean, like, if you're on the fence about starting DeMarco Murray, just look at what he did versus the Indianapolis Colts last time they played in week 6. He scored that was one of the double-digit games, by the way. This is a standard league, of course. He had 14.7 fantasy points. He had 40 yards rushing and 47 yards receiving. And he had 1 rushing touchdown. And I mean, that game was kind of hard to watch because Derrick Henry got a lot of carries. I think that was the game Derrick Henry broke loose for a long run. I like DeMarco Murray as an RB2. He's ranked 17th overall. That's artificially inflated by his 25.2 Week 10 game. And this is what DeMarco Murray does. And this is the hard thing about DeMarco. In each double-digit fantasy point game, the very next week, so his double-digit fantasy point game in week 3, 18 points. What do you do the next week? 3.5. The 1 week he has a double-digit fantasy week, 14.7. The very next week, 7.6. So it's split in half. And then the week that he goes 25.2 fantasy points, what do you do the next one? 4.7 fantasy points. Consciously, it's hard to trust DeMarco Murray. But if you don't put him in your lineup and he goes off, it's not going to be a 10 or 11 point. He's going to go off for his lowest double-digit fantasy point game was 14.7. Like, there's no denying. And that's kind of like weird of the Murrays. Latavius Murray, DeMarco Murray. Like, these guys are in DeMarco Murray, he's not in a timeshare per se. But as Jerrick McKinnon and Latavius Murray, but, like, it feels like it. Because the Titans' offense is hit or miss, DeMarco Murray to me he's a low-end RB2. He's never going to leave with a goose egg, but I see a lot of, 4-point fantasy points, and since week 3, he's had 1, 2, 3, 4 fantasy games where he's left you with 5 fantasy points or less. Is that worth the number 2 pick? He was a round 2 pick. I think he was ranked 9th? Or like 9th, or I forget where he was ranked on ESPN's rankings pre-draft. It was really crazy. And it's an interesting story how I got stuck with DeMarco Murray. I took Leveon Bell, 5th overall pick. Now, Le'Veon Bell fell to me 5th overall pick. You have to forget, David Johnson wasn't injured yet. So, you had David Johnson, Antonio Brown, and Le'Veon fell 5th to me in my league, and I kind of understood it because Le'Veon Bell did not show up to training camp and during the preseason. And people were concerned, is he going to show up in shape? Is he going to, what's going to happen with Le'Veon Bell? I said, I'll take a risk on him. So for Thanksgiving games, I say start DeMarco Murray. You got to put him in there. He's an RB2. I would not treat him as an RB1. If he's your RB1, you're hurting. The other games we have to look around, and also schedule your lineups very appropriately. There's a lot of Thursday games, and so people have to adjust to this for Thanksgiving. Is like, for a great example, I had Michael Thomas as my wide receiver 2 this week. Okay, I have Adam Thielen and Dez Bryant. Now, I'm playing Dez Bryant, but don't put Dez Bryant in your flex. Put him as your wide receiver 2, because for some odd reason, if you set Michael Thomas as your wide receiver 2 and say he gets hurt before Sunday, because the New Orleans Saints, they play on Sunday, by the way. And if you're concerned about Michael Thomas, the Rams give up the 7th fewest points to the fantasy wide receivers. I'm not concerned. Michael Thomas, he is what he is. But make sure when you're putting your lineups, guys that you are starting, there's always going to be this one person that does not do this, and they wish they would have done it. So just pay attention to what I'm trying to say. Then I'll talk about more of the fantasy. I'll rapid fire the fantasy. I spent a long time on DeMarco Murray. Whoever you're going to play, if he's a running back or wide receiver, put him in the running back and wide receiver slot. Because, for a great example, I have Le'Veon Bell. Okay? If I put him in my RB situation, Le'Veon Bell's not going to play till Sunday. Okay, Sunday night, actually. So, if I have Le'Veon Bell in my running back position, and let's say Le'Veon Bell gets injured during practice. We've seen worse things. We've seen Deshaun Watson go down in practice, a non-contact torn knee. You're going to regret that, because who are you going to put in your flex? So whoever you're playing on Thursday, do not put them in your flex. Put them, if they're a running back, put them in the running back spot. If they're a wide receiver, put them in the wide receiver spot. Do not, if you want to play Dez Bryant or DeMarco Murray, do not put them in the flex position. Do not do that. Because, for a great example, you want to put DeMarco Murray in the RB position, even though you might consider him as a flex play, but put him in the RB position. Because, let's say, if you are going to be playing with a guy like, say, Michael Thomas, you want to have room in your flex. You don't want to have a guy junk up your flex that's going to play on Thursday. Because if another guy gets injured, where are you going to put him? Your flex is 8 and up. So I think it's especially important, too, in leagues that can flex tight ends. I don't know, maybe if you're blessed with having Rob Gronkowski and Zach Ertz, then Obviously that would be flex considerations. But so that's what I'm trying to tell people. So let's look at the other games that are going on who might be of interest. And I'm sorry about that. Demarco Murray actually plays on Sunday. I kind of got lost there with Demarco Murray, the whole thing. So guys that you want to play, so Adam Thielen is Thursday. He plays versus the Detroit Lions. In Detroit, Adam Thielen has kind of been one of those wonders. He's been a high target guy. And I own Adam Thielen, and I want Case Keenum to keep on playing. Because Case Keenum is all about Adam Thielen. I mean, it's like watching Tony Romo with Dez Bryant. Dak with Dez Bryant, it's not working out well if you're a Dez owner, right? Dez coming into Week 12, 541 yards receiving, 4 touchdowns. That's not good. But Adam Thielen, you have to play him. You can't just say, you can't play him. He's the 4th best ranked wide receiver in Standard League. The 4th best. And he's just been crazy the last couple weeks. The last 3 games, all double-digit fantasy points. And we're not talking low double digits. We're talking 15.8, 22.6, and 18.3. You have to start him. Even in weeks where he wasn't going off for 100 yards and catching touchdowns, he got, since week 3, when he wasn't getting 100 yards, he still hit 90 yards or greater in 3 weeks. So, Adam Thielen is the opposite of DeMarco Murray, right? Adam Thielen is, guaranteed he's going to do something for you. Now, is he going to go for 100 yards like he has been the last 2 weeks? Is he going to go for touchdown? That was a knock on Adam Thielen before week 8. It's like the guy's getting yards, he's getting targets, but he's not getting touchdowns, right? So he's like the opposite of Dez Bryant. Dez Bryant was like, dude's getting targets, but he's not really getting yards. And Dez Bryant has only been held up by his 4 touchdowns this season. When you take away those 4 touchdowns, Dez, to me, is a bench player. He's got 541 yards. There's a lot of guys you can go around the league that has 541 yards. There's a lot of running backs that have 541 yards, or, all-purpose yards. So I don't care how you get the yards. You get them through catching. Does Bilal Powell even have about 541 yards? Alex Collins, for crying out loud, has more total yards than Dez Bryant. It's actually pretty sad when you think about it. Okay, so let's talk about the other matchups. Kyle Rudolph at the tight end position, no. Yeah, I don't like Kyle Rudolph in this game at the tight end. So if we're going to sticking in Minnesota, I don't like him. I just don't. I really, really don't. I don't like him in that situation. I don't like Kyle Rudolph. I could be wrong. Steph Diggs. If you're in a really competitive league, you have something better, play something better. Steph Diggs, he's just not been there this year. It's Adam Thielen. And Detroit is not that favorable to the slot receiver position, and Adam Thielen can kind of play that kind of joker wide receiver. He can play in the slot, and he plays as a wide receiver too. People do give Stephon Diggs it's going to be interesting to see how teams actually rotate their coverage now. But as long as there's a lot of things to talk about in Minnesota because Latavius Murray is now the bell horse, but Jerrick McKinnon is still getting his touches. So the Minnesota Vikings, everybody's talking about Adam Thielen. Okay, that's great, but Minnesota Vikings are a run-first football team. You want to tally Latavius Murray and Jerrick McKinnon's touches? They're huge. I don't think people really pay attention to this because we're so entrenched with the Saints, with Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. Those two. That's why Drew Brees' numbers. Drew Brees is playing all right. He's playing all right. But he's not playing like that. Drew Brees, the 9th overall fantasy quarterback. But being the 9th overall fantasy quarterback, I mean, so was Josh McCown coming in 2 weeks ago. He was the 9th overall ranked fantasy quarterback, right? So this year, it's not the year of the quarterbacks. So it's not like, oh, my quarterback finished in the top 10. Oh, he must have got you 17 fantasy points, 18 fantasy points a game. No, it's not like that this year. Drew Brees, since week 3, has only had 2 20-point fantasy games. Let me say that again. Drew Brees, since week 3, has only had 2 20-point fantasy games. Hate to break that to you. But in a league where Dak Prescott just got minus 1.2 fantasy points last week, minus 1.2. I see my opponent, I'm like, wow. Like, even Deshaun Kaiser can't get you negative 1.2 fantasy points on the Cleveland Browns, who are 0-10. As far as Dak Prescott, look, I think the experts are going to have him highly rated. All right, I mean that's just what I think. But personally, if you have better options, I get it. Dak Prescott is ranked 7th overall in standard league. So if you're just looking at the picture, but let's kind of get more objective here. He got minus 1.2 fantasy points last week when Alfred Morris established himself as the clear back to Ezekiel Elliott, and he did a good job. He got 17 carries and 91 yards. I mean, Alfred Morris is only getting 5.1 yards per carry. He's only playing really good. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott didn't even have that. All right, so he's filled the role of Ezekiel, not from catching the ball in the backfield, but if you want to talk about just pure running, Alfred Morris has really stepped up into the running role. The Joker's Rod Smith here. I really thought Darren McFadden can pass block a little bit. He can catch the ball in the backfield, and he does have that quick speed. And so it's kind of shocking that we don't see Darren McFadden kind of playing that complementary role to Alfred Morris. So there must be something that Rod Smith has that we're not seeing. But if you have Darren McFadden, drop him in your roster. Like, if you've been stashing Darren McFadden, so me, I got Alfred Morris and Darren McFadden. If you have Alfred Morris and Darren McFadden, I don't have Zeke. I'm holding the Zeke owner hostage. But I'm not dropping Darren McFadden. Now, I, of course, have 6 running backs who are not named Darren McFadden. So I have 7 running backs. And I like my receivers. And I have Russell Wilson as my quarterback, so I'm not going to, and I'll get on that later, I traded for Russell Wilson. You need to be trading. And that's another thing, too. How you set your rosters is also how you need to be trading right now, because the trade deadline ends in most fantasy leagues this Sunday. You need, even if you're like, this is like, I don't know if this trade's going to work out, just send it. Just send the trade. Because after Sunday, in most leagues, after 11:59 p.m., it's over. You cannot trade. And there's no bye weeks. There is no bye weeks. So understand, your waiver wire activity has probably gotten a lot lower, and everybody's probably soaked up like a sponge. So don't think, oh, this guy's going to drop that defense and pick up this player. No, there's no more dropping kickers and dropping and streaming. That's over. Like, if you are probably among the top 6 teams in your fantasy team, those teams aren't going to be dropping defenses and kickers. I'm sorry. Like, if you're waiting for a guy to drop, Buckner from the Chiefs, who's a fantastic kicker, it's not going to happen. They're not going to do it. If somebody has Matt Bryant as their kicker, they're not dropping him. There's no bye weeks. I know, like, a lot of people will rely on, I don't have waiver wire priorities, so I'll wait until somebody drops somebody good, then I'll pick them up on the second waivers later on in the week. That's not happening anymore. Nobody has a bye week. It's over. The only way you're going to improve your team, you have to trade now. Unless somebody gets injured and you have waiver priority. But who's going to get injured? I mean, okay, like, what are we left with? I mean, Washington Redskins running backs are decimated. Dallas with Ezekiel Elliott. The Green Bay Packers, boom. I mean, I think we've experienced our slew of injuries. I mean, I think what you see coming ahead is what you're going to get. So Adam Thielen, you have to start him. I don't expect 20 fantasy points from him in non-PPR leagues. Far as the Lions give up, though, they have the 19th. They give up the 19th most points to wide receivers, though. The 19th most. So that's very good. But in a ways, it's kind of bad. You know, it's like, okay, they're like one of those defenses that are a bend but don't break. And, you know, Adam Thielen has been breaking defenses. And so I don't know if he's going to break the Detroit Lions, but you have to start him. Come on. Des Bryant also plays. He plays at 4:30 p.m. So put him in your wide receiver position. Don't flex him. Do not flex him. Because if he's in your flex spot and you don't want to you don't eat up your flex spot. Because in your flex, you can probably play running back, tight end, or wide receiver. Don't do it. I know there's going to be some people out there saying, I set my lineup. Listen, because the guys that don't play on Thursday, if one of them gets injured, you want to have that flex spot open so you can maybe flex in a wide receiver or a tight end, you know, or last minute get somebody on waivers, you know, just boom, you know, insert somebody in there. So that's good. As far as Darren McFadden, look, obviously he's probably not going to really see the light of day. Let's just be honest here. But if there's nobody else out there, if your lineup set, don't drop Darren McFadden. Because if Alfred Morris, Alfred Morris, if he does not have a good game, Darren McFadden, you know, has to be called in. And I don't know. I'm holding on. Alfred Morris. Let's move on. So Alfred Morris, that's another matchup for the Dallas Cowboys. You know, Alfred Morris, I really see as you know, you like the matchup because the Chargers, they do give up the fourth most fantasy points to running backs. But here's the deal with Alfred Morris. He's had 28 carries in 2 games. And that's an average of 14 carries a game. Can you assume that Alfred Morris can continue getting 5.1 yards per carry? Because I want you to venture back to Dallas in 2015 when they lost Romo. You're saying, well, they have Dak Prescott. No, they're playing like the same offense as when they lost Romo. When they had Brandon Weeden and Matt Castle, they're playing exactly like that. Dak Prescott, I hate to say it, but for right now where he's at in his career, that team is helping Dak out. You never said Dak is making the players around him better. It's the other players around Dak that is making Dak better. No, if you're like, no. When did Tony Romo have a good running game? Besides 2014 with Demarco Murray? Never. Okay? What, you had Marion Barber for 1 year? Right? That put up one good season. When was the last time when Romo played, you're like, oh, an offensive lineman got hurt, Romo's going to suck? Never the case. Romo was able to put his team on his back and make players around him better. I mean, for crying out loud, Tony Romo made Patrick Creighton, for a small period of time, a household name. He made Miles Austin a household name, and Miles Austin signed over a $45 million contract. Thank you, Tony Romo. He was undrafted free agent, Miles Austin. Tony Romo grabbed guys who were drafted in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, undrafted, and made them number 2 number 3 wide receivers. Dak, not so much. I think you're seeing that right now. I got crap for saying that. I'm a Cowboys fan. I have to say it. I am benching Alfred Morris. I'm benching Alfred Morris. If you don't have the luxury of having 6 playable running backs, I have Carlos Hyde, Leveon Bell, DeMarco Murray. I'm playing an NFL.com Experience League, and my league is a 10-team league. And by the way, I had to trade. I had Keenan Allen. So my wide receivers were Adam Thielen, Keenan Allen, Dez Bryant, and Michael Thomas. I made a trade. I had Drew Brees as my quarterback. You're like, well, you just said you had Russell. I had Russell. I traded Drew Brees and Keenan Allen for Russell Wilson and Carlos Hyde. I had to pull the trigger. I offered Drew Brees and Keenan Allen for Tom Brady. The guy didn't accept or decline the trade, so I had to move on. He shot me a couple emails, and I said, okay, here's the deal. I'll give you Brees and Keenan Allen. See, he wanted a big star player that was not a quarterback. I'm saying, I'm not going to, listen, I don't want to carry 2 quarterbacks right now. All right, I'm done. I had Deshaun Watson. He got injured. All right. I had Drew Brees. Listen, this is not the year. Drew Brees on paper. So I traded Drew Brees because he scored 21 fantasy points last week, and Keenan Allen went off and scored 28.2 fantasy points last week. So I said, let me trade them now. Let me trade them while they're hot. Let me do it. So I did it. But how do I perceive Alfred Morris? Well, I say this because he's got 28 carries in the past 2 games, but I also told you that he had 17 carries last week. So what's that mean? He only had 11 carries. See how people like to say stats like, well, this person had so many carries. Okay, but how many, Alex Collins had 20 carries last week, but he only got 49 yards. And 9 out of the 20 carries were in the 4th quarter. So basically half of his carries were towards the end of a football game. See how you can skew stats? I don't like when people do that. So with this going forward, this is a perfect matchup. If you had Ezekiel Elliott, this would be he'd be the number 1 running back coming into this week. He'd be the number 1 running back over Le'Veon Bell, over anybody, because the Chargers give up the 4th most fantasy points to running backs. This is like Black Friday on Thursday. So you're just taking deals. Alfred Morris, he's an RB2 this week. Do not get me wrong, he's an RB2. I don't think he has the upside like DeMarco Murray has as an RB2, but how can you not deny the matchup? But it's how the Cowboys play. Alfred Morris is not going to be in the game. What does Philip Rivers like to do? He likes to throw the ball 100 times. For crying out loud, he almost set pass attempt records last year. He likes to throw the ball like crazy. Hence Keenan Allen's high. He throws the ball like crazy. Melvin Gordon is you want to talk about a play? Melvin Gordon is a play. You have Keenan Allen. Let's play devil's advocate here. The anti-Cowboy. You have Keenan Allen. Play him. Watch the Dallas Cowboys secondary. The Dallas Cowboys, contrary to popular belief, they have an okay defense. It's all right. It's not bad. But look at that secondary. Keenan Allen, I can just see him just whizzing through that defense. I'm not saying he's going to put up 20 fantasy points, but he's a top 10 wide receiver play this week, which means he's a number 1 wide receiver. To me, he's right there with Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen, I'll give a little bit more credit towards. He's playing a tougher defense, of course, but I do like Adam Thielen more just because he's performing at such a high level. But Keenan Allen, you want to talk about upside? Keenan Allen, you have to play him. But again, make sure you insert him not in your flex spot. You put him at the wide receiver spot because he plays on Thursday. versus the Dallas Cowboys. And Melvin Gordon, did you even have to think about that? No, I didn't think so. Okay, so those are some of the plays that you can play. Also, make sure you adjust your defenses. Some people don't do this. They have if you're stashing 2 defenses, which is great. That probably means your roster is pretty solid if you can carry 2 defenses. I'm stashing 2 defenses because I have the Bears defense and they're a matchup play. I like their Week 13 matchup. If you're actually looking for a defense and you can pick up the Chicago Bears, like the Bears are not widely owned, but they're the 10th ranked overall defense. And look at their Week 13 matchup, San Francisco, and their Week 16 matchup, Cleveland. I mean, they have a combined record of 1-19. The opponents that they're going to play Week 13, Week 16. And Week 13 is the week before fantasy playoffs, usually. So why not pick up the Chicago Bears defense? If they're sitting there, pick up the Chicago Bears defense. Look at their schedule, Week 13 and Week 16. San Francisco 49ers, the Cleveland Browns. Can you not gift wrap a defense? I mean, in some leagues, the Bears don't even have 15% ownage. NFL.com, they have actually 13.9% ownage. Pick them up. Just pick them up. All right? But adjust your defenses. Adjust them. Now, what about Latavius Murray? Well, for teams that have guys like Jay Ajayi, and you're sitting there going, Jay Ajayi, you're like, man, I mean, he got you 91 yards, and no doubt he's put up back-to-back double-digit games. But they're not dominating double digits. He literally put last week 10.1, so just a hair that got you a double digit. And so that's why I'm telling you the scores in detail, so you can make informed choices and go. Because somebody go, well, this person got double digit fantasy points. It's like, okay, you got 10.1. Jay Ajayi, yeah, he got 91 yards rushing, and he got 10 receiving, but he only rushed the ball 7 times. Basically, he got most of his yardage on 2 decent carries. Other than that, his 1 catch was for 10 yards. And here's the thing about... look at LeGarrette Blount. He got 13 carries. Corey Clement got 6 carries for 50 yards. And Blount got 13 carries for 57 yards. So Corey Clement actually got 6 for 50 yards. So pretty much anybody that runs behind the Eagles is getting decent yards per carry. So, but Jay Ajayi, if you look at it, he's second in the pecking order. He only got 3 more. He got 4 less carries than LeGarrette Blount, and he only got 3 more carries than Corey Clement. How many times did they rush the freaking ball? Anyway, yeah, the Eagles want to run the football, and they want to do play action. They want to do some fancy things. And Carson Wentz isn't scared to really whip the ball down the field when he sees the opportunity to. But if you're sitting there with Jay Ajayi, and you're like, Latavius Murray's there, and you're kind of, like, Latavius Murray, like, the Lions give up the 6th most fantasy points to running backs. So now we're back to the conversation, we're back to the Alfred Morris conversations, right? So I'm making this without knowing what's going to happen, but Alfred Morris, I'm going to assume, is going to get more touches, or more carries, I should say, than Latavius Murray. I'm going to assume that's going to happen. That being said, I would not be shocked if Latavius Murray has a better running day than Alfred Morris. What I'm trying to say is, if you're thinking, I picked up Latavius Murray, after everybody picked up Jerry McKinnon and I stashed Latavius Murray, or somebody picked Latavius Murray up during the Jerry McKinnon pickups and then they dropped him, and then I picked up Latavius Murray. I don't own Latavius Murray. Actually, I was one of the guys that picked up Latavius Murray and dropped him. Oops. Yeah, because I've seen Alfred Morris and Darren McFadden sitting there when Ezekiel Elliott got suspended, and I had to make roster spots, and yeah, my bad. Sorry, Latavius Murray. We all make mistakes. So Latavius Murray, I don't know how he's going to be ranked. I don't think he's going to be ranked the way that I'm ranking him, but I look at this. Minnesota, what did I say? They like to run the football. Everybody's talking about Adam Thielen, but they like to run the football. I mean, if we're talking about Latavius Murray getting 15 touches, and we're talking about Latavius Murray and Jerry McKinnon splitting carries, that means there's 30 rushes in the football game. The Minnesota Vikings are, despite what everybody says they are, they're a run-first football team. They're a very balanced football team at that, if you want to say that. They like to run the football. Latavius Murray is the hot hand right now, and it seems like they just want to run. It's like they just want Latavius Murray to take over. It just seemed like they wanted him to do it. If you're treating Latavius Murray as an RB2, I don't have a problem with that. Like, I don't. I know Jerry McKinnon's going to be the favored guy here, but in all the expert lineups, but Latavius Murray, like, he's not bad. He's not bad at all. I mean, he's playing. The Lions give up, like I said, the 6th most fantasy points to running backs. It's not a shocker that Adam Thielen is having these breakout performances along with Latavius Murray's running ability. But understand Latavius Murray is touchdown dependent. No doubt about it. He's only had 2 games since week 3 where he's gone over 90 yards. And one of them was last week. The cool part is there's probably going to be some red zone opportunity. I mean, you know that the red zone is Latavius Murray's, right? I mean, you do know that, right? Like, the goal line is Latavius Murray's. Okay, so I'd say a low-end RB2 on Latavius Murray, but I don't mind him. I mean, if you're deciding between 2 different running backs and you're looking for the RB2 spot, again, if you're going to start Latavius Murray, put him in the RB position, not the flex position. Because, gosh forbid, one of your guys that you don't start gets injured, that doesn't play on Thursday, gets injured for Sunday, you want that flex open. Again, I cannot say that enough. I see all the time in my league around this time of year, I see that one person. Every single year, I'm never disappointed. They will mess up the roster and somebody gets injured. Just don't do it. Don't be that person. Just don't do it. And again, I don't have to mention the Chargers. I mean, do I realistically? Like, Keenan Allen, start. Melvin Gordon, start. Hunter Henry, no, I like other options. Hunter Henry is a low. I mean, you got to play with what you got. That's all I'm going to say. Right, so let's get off the Cowboys a little bit and let's go to the other games, right? So, obviously, you have a game that's between Washington. In Washington, you do have, there's some play right here. I mean, so you have Orleans Darkwa, and they're your late game on Thursday, so adjust your rosters accordingly to that. So, surprisingly, Orleans Darkwa ranked 29th overall, but understand, since week 3, Orleans Darkwa giving you 4 double-digit fantasy points, and I'll list the points in order: 13.2, 13 even, 10.8, and 15. And even when he wasn't posting double-digit fantasy points, when he clearly separated himself from Gallman, and Orleans Darkwa was the clear starter, he didn't really let you down too bad. His worst fantasy game, realistically, was a 4.8. So even when he does not leave you with double digits, he does give you nice single digits. So versus the Washington Redskins, he's not a bad play. I'm not saying like, oh gosh, start him. But I mean, like, the Washington Redskins do give up the eighth and ninth most, eight or nine, it depends on what you look at it, but he gives up the eighth most fantasy points to running backs. Again, this is in standard league. We're not talking about PPR. So there's some play with Orleans Darkwa. Just consider that. Maybe if you're thinking about like Orleans Darkwa and say, I don't know, maybe you're on the fence between Orleans Darkwa and Amari Cooper. Like, obviously, at this point, I don't even know why you'd be making that decision, but I'm just kind of rattling things off. I like Orleans Darkwa. If you're talking about Orleans Darkwa, I mean, there's just a lot of things that you have to like. So Orleans Darkwa is a play that I personally wouldn't mind. Eighth most fantasy points to running back. I mean, I'm not feeling confident, like, oh my gosh, but he's not going to leave you with like 3 fantasy points or something like that. I mean, he hasn't shown that anyway, so I like Orleans Darkwa a little bit. I don't love him. He's not on, he wouldn't be on my love list. Again, the kickers in this game, you have to kind of like them because they're playing in a dome. I mean, first off, K. Forbath, if you look at him, he's the 5th ranked best kicker in the NFL for fantasy football. And since week 3, he's only had 2 games in which he's left you with single digits. He's had 3 games, He had 1 bad game versus Detroit, which we do have to note that he only scored 1 fantasy point versus Detroit. But understand, Minnesota didn't really know what the crap they were doing during that time. That was in week 4. So I don't really let that scare me. What does scare me a little bit is his little inconsistency. He missed a field goal last week. But, I mean, going ahead, yeah, you play the kickers. I mean, yeah, you play Matt Prater and you play Kai Forbath. Like, yeah, fine, I mean, Jerrick McKinnon, again, we're going back to this whole thing. Yeah, I mean, how can, like, Jerrick McKinnon, do I slightly favor Latavius Murray? But McKinnon, let's not make a mistake about it. The guy had 19 touches last week. He had 14 rushes for 48 yards, and he had 5 catches for a dinky 12 yards. Yeah, I know everything's gone south for him, and everything's gone up for Latavius Murray. But, yeah, I mean, I like Jerry McKinnon. I just have to talk about the Thursday games. And lastly, we'll touch up with the Washington Redskins. All right, and we have to talk about Sam Perrine, or Sama J. Perrine. So the New York Giants give up the 12th most fantasy points to running backs, so that does favor Sam Perrine. What does not favor Sam Perrine is his yards per carry the entire season. That really hasn't benefited him at all. So, yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that you're doing. But if you picked him up, like Sam Perrine, I think he's kind of in that territory of Dion Lewis, and I don't know how you really consider that. I mean, we've had a one sample size game in which, 23 touches, 117 yards. I mean, but you got to play them if you have them. I mean, I'm not sitting here and embarking on you. I'm saying, listen, you just have to think. If you have the luxury of seeing what Sam Perrine can do for another week versus the New York Giants team, kind of like prove it to me that you can do this again. Prove it to me that you can do it again. I mean, we know that the Washington Redskins like to use the running backs. I mean, Chris Thompson, like, okay, we've seen that, right? I mean, so Sam Perrine, I mean, he's going to get his touches. But he's in that kind of like, and it's a good conversation to have. I mean, you literally picked up what could be a legit low to mid RB2 going forward off the waiver wire. Like, now in my league, he was owned 2 weeks ago. So, like, I owned Alex Collins. Somebody picked up Stanford. Like, we beat it to the punch. Like, we just did that. I had to pick up Alfred Morris before Ezekiel Elliott was officially suspended. So, like, I had to do that in advance. So those are the kind of the key players for Thursday. I know I kind of spent a long time on this, but like these are information that you might need to know. Like this is information that you might need to know coming ahead. Kirk Cousins, if you like Kirk Cousins, the Giants gave up the third most fantasy points to quarterbacks. I mean, and Kirk Cousins is currently ranked the fifth quarterback in the league. So that's a matchup that you have to like. So I wouldn't be too scared to do Kirk Cousins. I mean, I know Kirk Cousins, you know, I mean, I understand. He's a boom or bust quarterback, right? But he's more boom than bust. I mean, when I say that, since week 3, since I've been using week 3 as a Geiger, I mean, he's got 6 double-digit games. I mean, 6 games in which he scored 20 points or more. Like, pretty insane. I mean, the only problem is that when he doesn't, he gets you 8 fantasy points, and then he gets you 10 fantasy points. So when he booms, he booms. And when he kind of hiccups, he hiccups. He doesn't, like, leave you with, like, 15 or 16 fantasy points. It's interesting to note, though, the last time he played the Dallas Cowboys, that was one of his single-digit games. Yeah. 10.5 fantasy points. 10.52, you want to be technical, to the Dallas Cowboys last time they played. But understand the Dallas Cowboys, what they had. They had Ezekiel Elliott. Also, the Cowboys scored 33 points in that game. Do you think the Cowboys are capable? So, now, of course, they're not playing the Cowboys. They're playing the Giants. But just some considerations, you know, was Dallas the greatest defense you've ever seen this year? No. But, like, Kirk Cousins, I understand all the pieces around him aren't that spectacular. And Kirk Cousins, I think, takes a minor hit because of Chris Thompson's ability to catch the ball in the backfield and run. You know, but, like, yeah, just know that Kirk Cousins is playing and adjust your roster accordingly. Because, like, there's an opponent, I believe, in my league who has Kirk Cousins on the bench right now. And I don't think they realize that he plays in tomorrow's game. Okay? So, like, I almost want to shoot that person an email and say, dude, adjust your lineup, man. Like, adjust it. You know, like, do it. You have the 5th best-ranked quarterback sitting on your bench. I mean, we're talking about Russell Wilson, Carson Wentz, Tom Brady, and then there's Kirk Cousins. I mean, like he's there. You know, it's like, dude, adjust your roster, do it. But anyway, guys, so that's really the Thursday games that we're seeing. So if you're playing fantasy football, Adjust your rosters accordingly. That's Thursday. So again, so what are the key players that you like on Thursday? Well, obviously, there's some no-brainers there, right? There's Melvin Gordon, Adam Thielen, Keenan Allen, right? I mean, these are just, like, we don't have to think too much about this stuff, right? Like, you put them in there. You just slip them in there. Some questionable guys, Alfred Morris. I understand Alfred Morris. He's got 5.1 yards per carry. I already discussed this. Last week, 17 carries for 91 yards. Problem, the Chargers like to pass the ball. And if the Chargers get up on the Dallas Cowboys, that's going to be a game where that's not going to favor Alfred Morris, because Alfred Morris is not a guy that catches out of the ball in the backfield. And it's interesting to note that Rod Smith, I believe last week, got the first carry. The guy that's backing up Alfred Morris. So that's very interesting. Just very interesting. But by default, Alfred Morris is cementing himself as the man. You can't deny 5.1 yards per carry, and I don't think the Cowboys can either. Even though it seems like the Cowboys are trying to get Rod Smith into the game a lot more, it's just Rod Smith, when he rushes the football, he just doesn't have that ability. I'm really shocked that Darren McFadden is actually not activated. Because again, in 2015, Darren McFadden had over 1,000 yards. What most people discredit is that Darren McFadden, I believe, only started 10 games out of 16. People forget about Joseph Randle. Yeah, the guy that stole underwear for no reason. Yeah, he gets a starting job in Dallas and then decides to steal underwear. Like, was that the smartest move ever? No. Okay. Bye, Joseph Randle. So Darren McFadden came in. I believe he started 10 games. And I believe Darren McFadden was the 5th leading rusher that year with 10 or 11 starts. So if we look at that, Darren McFadden is a guy that can block, catch the ball in the backfield, and that can run fast with the football. I'm really shocked that he's not playing, has at least a role on this team. So the Dallas Cowboys must like Rod Smith. They must see something that we don't. But anyway, yeah, Alfred Morris, I could be eating my own words. Alfred Morris could be that RB2. He could be an RB2 running back, and he could be that for the next couple of weeks. What I caution people, if you remember 2015, without Tony Romo, running backs got a lot of yards behind the Dallas Cowboys. The problem was they weren't scoring rushing touchdowns. And what happened to Alfred Morris exactly last week? 17 carries, 91 yards, 0 TDs. And that was the one big reason why the Cowboys actually drafted Ezekiel Elliott last year with the 4th overall pick, because his knack at Ohio State for finding the end zone. And right now, our running backs, like Dallas Cowboy running backs, cannot find the end zone unless your name is Ezekiel Elliott. And this has been going on since 2015, guys. This is not like a new problem for Dallas. In 2015, despite being the 5th leading rusher in the NFL, Darren McFadden, with only 10 or 11 starts, the dude barely found the end zone. So yeah, the carries are there. The yards are going to be there. But like, if you honestly expect 15, 16, 17, you need a touchdown or 150 yards rushing. And I don't know if Alfred Morris is going to give you either or. But certainly, like, is he an RB? Yeah, I mean, Alfred Morris is RB2. Like when I say this, Sam Perrine, Alfred Morris, and Dion Lewis, they're all in that bubble. They're all in that, like, man, they could be really good RB2s, or they could be like low-end RB2s flex. Like, You just don't know because Dion Lewis, like, the New England Patriots always trying to trick us. And I mean, how many? James White touches the ball. Rex Burkhead touches the ball. Dion Lewis touches the ball. I mean, you're talking about a Patriots team that throws touchdowns to offensive linemen every other year. I mean, like, so that's a scary thing about Dion Lewis. Yeah, there's no questioning Dion Lewis's ability. There's shadow, but James White, I mean, like, they're all good tailbacks, is what they are. They're not like thoroughbred running backs. They're like tailbacks. They're not like thoroughbred like Ezekiel Elliott's or Leonard Fournette's or Latavius Murray's or, they're not there. And you're like, did you just compare Latavius Murray to Ezekiel Elliott? No, I'm saying is just pure-bred running backs. Just, like, they're kind of like tailbacks. Like guys that are born to be third down backs, but somehow found a way to be decent first and second down backs. So they're like a tailback almost, if you will. They're kind of like a, not a pure-born run between the tackles, big guy that can just bam, but they somehow manage to just be so quick. It's not about being fast. It's about being quick, hitting the hole really quick and getting those, 5-6 yards on first down on a run. And that's what I think Dion Lewis brings. And it just doesn't matter what the Patriots try to do, whether it's, Mike Gillislee or Rex Burkhead. Like, they try to have other running backs run the ball besides Dion Lewis. But this is kind of like the Alfred Moore syndrome. Like Dallas was trying to say, hey, Rod Smith is really good. Let's do this. And then like Alfred Moore's like, no, I'm just going to keep on getting 5.1 yards per carry. Like, no. And Dion Lewis is like doing that. Dion Lewis is like saying like, dude, look at my yards per carry when I run the football. Like, they're amazing. I mean, it's like Alex Collins with the Ravens, right? I mean, it's just kind of crazy. It's just like, that's the way it is. You have to follow the yards per carry sometimes, and that's a good indicator of what. So the guys understand who's playing, right? Like, understand who's playing on Thursday. Understand that. Adapt your rosters appropriately. If there's anything that you can take from all this rambling, is when you set your rosters, who's ever playing on Thursday, if you're going to play them, don't put them in the flex. Put them at their position. Because if a guy that's playing on Sunday gets injured, and gets injured on a Friday practice, you're going to want to have that flex spot open. So if you're committed to playing a guy, put him at his position, not a flex. I understand. So if you're viewing Alfred Morris as a flex play this week, or Dion Lewis as a flex play this week, I don't blame you, right? Because that's where by the virtue of there being a lot of injuries, like in a normal year, these guys would be probably considered low-end RB2s because we just don't know much about what's going on. Like the Patriots moving their running backs all over the place. We don't know. Like Bill Belichick can just pull a whole stunt and Dion Lewis gets like 2 carries. Like we just don't know, right? Alfred Morris, okay, but it looks like Dallas wants to push Rod Smith in there a little bit. But by sheer default, Alfred Morris is saying no. And Sam Perrine, I'm just going to say it because I always butcher the name, Samaje Perrine, his yards per carry are not that good this year. But he did have a good game last week. And that's all he got to go off of. So these are small sample sizes that we got. We don't have a big sample size here. So, yeah, there is some risk playing with these guys, but they're solid. They're solid plays. Definitely solid plays, no doubt about it. So just proceed with that. And your defenses. Please understand that, your defenses. So know who's playing. because my opponent right now has Kirk Cousins sitting on the bench, okay, who's the 5th best quarterback in Standard League. He's sitting on the bench right now. So if he does not adjust his lineup, like, whatever, dude. You know what I mean? Like, if he does not adjust his lineup, then we got issues, right? So, I don't know. He may not adjust his lineup at all. And don't be that guy. Don't be that guy that goes, oh my gosh, there was 3 games on Thursday. There only used to be like 2 guys. You know, the Giants, Redskins play, the Cowboys, Vikings play. All right, you following me here? Then you have the Chargers and Lions. So we're talking about Dak Prescott, Matthew Stafford. Oh, I didn't talk about Matthew Stafford, did I? That's a judgment call on you. Phillip Rivers, if he's sitting on the waiver wire, I'm assuming he is. If you're in a 10-team league, he might be worth a pickup this week. I wouldn't be shocked if Phillip Rivers can give you 15, 16, 17 fantasy points. I mean, because if you're banking, really what you're banking on is the Cowboys' offense struggling. That's also the same reason why you're probably scared to play Alfred Morris. Because here's how you have to view this, in my humble opinion. So if you're talking about Dez Bryant and his 541 yards only, which I cannot believe Alex Collins, the running back for the Ravens, has more total yards than Dez Bryant. And Alex Collins didn't play every game this season. This is weird. All right, so to see Dez Bryant on having such low numbers. That's it. So, like, Adam Thielen almost has a double than what Dez Bryant has. Almost double. Almost. It's just weird. All right, so anyway, if you're debating between Dez Bryant and Alfred Morris, do you make a play at Phillip Rivers? The Chargers defense. Look at the Chargers defense. Look at the Chargers schedule, and look at the offenses that they're playing. Yeah, like I start the Chargers defense versus the Cowboys. Like last year or a couple years ago, we would never be saying that, but we're going to say it this year. Like, yes, you play the Chargers defense. Like, yeah, if they're out there, pick them up. Plug and play, like, and keep them because they're good they have a good look at their games. When you're looking at defenses, look beyond this week. Just do that. Like the Bears, week 13, the San Francisco 49ers, week 16, the Cleveland Browns. You really can't get 2 better matchups. Like, that's a combined record of 1-19 is what the Bears defense plays against. Week 13 and 16, the Niners and the Browns. And the Niners got their 1 win. I mean, come on. Let's just view this for what it is. Right? The Niners got their 1 win versus the Giants. Like, so was that really a win? I mean, like, come on. If the Bears defense is out there and you're looking for a spot and you're, you have even a playoff team. You're going to be in a fantasy playoff or you're fighting for a playoff life. Like, week 13, next week, the Bears defense is going to be one of the number 1 streaming defenses if they're on the waiver wire. They have to be a top 10 defense next week. They have to be. Unless, like, their whole entire defensive line just gets torn up this week. I just don't see that happening. I hope it doesn't happen because I have the Bears defense. I looked ahead. So you just have to look at that. The Vikings defense, it's, they're not, I'm not gonna lie, I don't have the stats on the Vikings defense. I'm sorry, I didn't look that up. I wasn't thinking about Matthew Stafford, but the Vikings defense, knowing their fantasy points, what I've seen on their fantasy points, we all know that the Vikings have a solid defense. Okay, Matthew Stafford versus the Minnesota Vikings, that's something that you're going to have to weigh out. The only way I've seen some experts were very low on Matthew Stafford this week, which might, again, there was some Golden Tate hate, but if I'm sitting there with Golden Tate and you're playing in a non-two quarterback league, so you're playing in a standard format league, I don't mind Golden Tate in this one. I'm not ooh, Golden Tate's a top 5 play this week. No, I'm not jumping on him like Keenan Allen or Adam Thielen, but I'm looking at him and going, okay, yeah. You're going to have to weigh that, but just know the teams that are playing again and set your rosters appropriately. Don't be that person. You wake, because listen, it's Thanksgiving. People are thinking about Black Friday, and people are, spending time with their family. It's sad that we're associating. You know what? Again, I'm making this video, and hopefully I get it posted up in time. But I'm making this video November 22nd, the day before Thanksgiving of 2017. So I'm going to try to pump this out early in the morning. But it's sad that I was in the store yesterday, so 2 days before Thanksgiving, and it's all about Christmas. And I want to go to the store before the holiday because everything kind of shuts, everybody's all grinchy, and everybody's preparing for Black Friday, and, isn't it sad? We can't even celebrate Thanksgiving, and everybody's focused on Black Friday and Christmas. Everybody's in Grinch mode right now because oh, wait a minute, I got to go to my family's at noon. Oh, we got to worry about Black Friday. I mean, isn't it so weird that we've actually done this now? And football's added more football games, so that means there's more teams than ever. So you're inundated with more things in life. So for your fantasy life, please, and this is for every Thursday, but in particular, have a happy holiday, number one. All right? Really spend time with your family. And I say this with all sincerity. I'm not just saying this to, this is not a clickbait thing here. I'm saying this with all sincerity. Please enjoy things with your family. All right? I've gone to more funerals in the past couple years than I have weddings. Okay? And a lot of people have passed that were young, okay, that were in the 40s and 50s and early 60s, okay. I've had, somebody lose their mother unexpectedly. I've had somebody, it's been, I'm just saying this. Spend time with your family. I know there's Black Fridays out there, and I know between all the chaos, but enjoy the time with your family, enjoy football, but set your fantasy lineup. Don't be that guy that has Kirk Cousins on the bench and you forgot that the Washington Redskins were playing on Thanksgiving Day, and then you're like, holy crap, Kirk Cousins went off and got me 24 fantasy points, but he was on my bench. I went into a detailed hour for you. I mean, that's very detailed for just 6 football teams. Okay? But really, set your lineups, look at defenses ahead. There could be a defense again, the Chicago Bears are only owned in 13.9% of leagues in NFL.com leagues. So that means there's 86% of people don't own that. So in 86% of leagues, you wake up right now, you look at your computer screen, the Chicago Bears are going to be there. Week 13, they play the San Francisco 49ers. Week 16, they play the Cleveland Browns. That is the best setup you could ever have. That's it. That's perfect. So that's a defense you might want to pick up. I didn't talk about Sunday football because there's just so much to talk about, and I specifically wanted to isolate this and just make sure people set the rosters right. So what are speculative plays? So if you're playing, I think I don't think I have to talk about the Chargers. You're playing Melvin Gordon. If you don't have a better quarterback, you're putting Phillip Rivers in there. If there's a waiver wire pickup this week to plug and play, and Phillip Rivers is out there, that's what you're doing. I don't have to, Keenan Allen, you're playing them. These aren't things that I have to really explain. So I didn't spend a lot of time with those Chargers, their defense versus the very poor playing Cowboys offense. We don't have to really talk about that at detailed length. But Adam Thielen, I don't have to spend all day on him, do I? No, I don't. I spent some time on Latavius Murray. I gave enough time to Latavius Murray, Jerrick McKinnon. I did spend some time on DeMarco Murray, just because he has a good matchup. And if you're deciding, because DeMarco Murray is the wild card of the week, I think, just of the week of who to play. He has a great matchup versus Indianapolis Colts. He does not play on Thursday. He plays on Sunday. But when you're adjusting, this is why I say, when you're adjusting your lineups, put DeMarco right now in the flex spot. Because he doesn't play on Thursday. If you're going to play with Sam Perrine, you picked him up on waivers, and maybe you're going to play with Dion Lewis. Don't put any of them in your flex. Save DeMarco Murray for your flex if you play him. DeMarco Murray, prone to injuries, who knows? On a Friday practice or Saturday, he might pull a hamstring. I hope he doesn't because I own him. But I certainly want to have him in my flex position taken up if that happens, and I have to play a wide receiver instead. So really the big game of the week is the Cowboys and the Chargers, because it kind of has the boom-bust type play. Can Phillip Rivers be a quarterback that gets you 20 fantasy points? Maybe. Can, Alfred Morris, the whole key is going to be dictated upon this. Will the Cowboys, for 2 back-to-back weeks, stink at offense? Basically, is Dak Prescott not going to really play that good of football? Versus, because here's the scenario that might happen. Phillip Rivers likes to throw the football and could have high success versus the Cowboys' defense, especially their secondary. And I didn't check if Sean Lee was going to play either. I don't think Sean Lee is going to be in the game. So that's a big thing. There was a stat on Sean Lee. Sean Lee, when he's not in the lineup of the Cowboys almost give up double the yards in rushing. It's a crazy stat. One player. It's a one-player stat. And so that opens up the game for Melvin Gordon. As I said, these are no-brainers. Melvin Gordon, no-brainer. Keenan Allen, not too much thought. Phillip Rivers, you got to do what you got to do. He's not the worst-case quarterback this week. He's not the worst scenario. Now, as far as the Cowboys, I think there's more risk with the Cowboys, if you really look at it from my perspective. Yeah, the Chargers give up the 6th most rushing yard, or give up the 6th most fantasy points to running backs, which is very advantageous. Was it the 4th or 6th? I forget what I said. I think it was the 6th most points to fantasy running backs, which is very great for Alfred Morris. The problem is if the Chargers get ahead, the Chargers keep on getting ahead, and that Dak Prescott sputters for a 3rd week in a row, do you think Alfred Morris is going to be the running back? Now, Rod Smith is clearly the pass catcher. So that's what you're scared about. If you are starting Alfred Morris or Dak Prescott, that's what you're scared. You're scared of the Chargers ringing up points. Actually, I should reverse that. If you're a Dak Prescott owner, you might want that because Dak Prescott's going to have to throw the football and run with his legs. But Dak Prescott does play better when the team plays better. Again, Dak is not carrying that team. That team is helping Dak. And so we see that now. I don't think there's anything. We saw that early in the playoffs last year with the Green Bay Packers versus the Cowboys when the Packers went up 21-0 to the Cowboys. You know what the Packers did? They said, okay, you're not going to run the football on us. Dak, you beat us. And the Packers went up 21-0. When the Cowboys had Tony Romo, you would never see that because they respected the pass. They would never go, okay, you know what, we're going to load up on the run. We'll leave Dez Bryant one-on-one. We'll leave Jason Witten on a safety. We'll leave Terrence Williams on our second-best corner one-on-one. We're going to load the box. We don't believe your arm can beat us. No, they would not do that with Tony Romo because Tony Romo was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to heave this ball right to Dez Bryant one-on-one. Throw up a 50-50 ball, and Dez will probably come up and catch with it. And it almost worked in 2014 when that Dez no catch, he had a catch, but it was ruled a no catch. That one play that prevented the Cowboys from going to the NFC Championship game that year. You know, the year that Tony Romo had 31 touchdowns and only 10 interceptions. The only year that he had a really good running game. You know, pretty much what Dak Prescott has right now. Yeah. So, is the Cowboys really helping out Dak Prescott? Dak needs to improve his play. We see that already. He needs to improve his play. Like, if you ask me who's a better quarterback, Carson Wentz or Dak Prescott? Carson Wentz. Deshaun Watson or Deshaun Watson? Deshaun Watson, like, made Will Fuller, like, there was about a couple game stretch there where Will Fuller was just catching nothing but touchdowns. Like, do you see how Deshaun Watson made everybody around him better? Dak doesn't do that. Has Dak made Dez better? Has he? No, he hasn't. So Dak's a good quarterback, but you just have to be what he is. He's not as good as a passer as Tony Romo was. And that translates to fantasy points. As far as guys like if you own Dez Bryant, if you own guys like Jason Witten, you know, that hurts. So the key, you have to outweigh these options, and I'll give it to you this way. If you believe that the Chargers are going to run up the score because Philip Rivers likes to throw him some football, if you believe that, and you believe that Dak is going to struggle, then realistically, you do not feel comfortable playing Alfred Morris. That answers your question for you. Because Alfred Morris is not a pass catcher. Clearly, the Cowboys are favoring Rod Smith. That's your answer. If you think that's going to happen, you don't like Dak Prescott either in this game. I think you have to play him, despite the last 2 weeks, especially last week, minus 1.2 points. Again, Deshaun Kaiser can't even do that for the Cleveland Browns. Minus 1.2 points? Minus? One of the first times I've ever seen a quarterback put up minus points. I've seen it happen before, Matt Schaub. That was Matt Schaub. Like, come on. You know, like, come on. Like, so, if you think that the Chargers are going to run up the score on the Cowboys and Dak's going to, you know, the offense is not going to be playing good, then obviously you're playing Dak Prescott. Like, you're playing him. I don't care what you say. You're playing him. But, like, you're not going to really be high on Alfred Morris. You're going to be probably go, okay, Dez Bryant is going to be my guy. You know, so if you're like, I don't know about Dez Bryant, if you have that luxury. Again, if you're playing in a 12-team league or 14, you probably do not have the luxury of what I'm talking about. I play in a 10-team, you know, again, it's an NFL.com experience league. It's very competitive. But I have the luxury of saying this because I drafted most of my guys. I started off my league at 4-0. I didn't have the luxury of all these waiver wire pickups, like when Jerrick McKinnon or Dalvin Cook went down and Aaron Rodgers went down and, you know, Ty Montgomery fractured his ribs. And I didn't have the luxury of doing this. I own Carlos Hyde because I made a trade this past week. And that trade was only to get Russell Wilson. Again, I traded Drew Brees and Keenan Allen for Russell Wilson and Carlos Hyde. Now, I probably got the better end of that deal, but if you look at Seattle's upcoming schedule and you compare that to Drew Brees, yeah, Russell Wilson has a much harder schedule. And if you look at the San Diego Chargers schedule moving forward, Keenan Allen has some really nice matchups. So Carlos Hyde plays the Seattle Seahawks this week. So, the other person that made that trade, I hate to say it, but that trade seems like it favors me right now. But if Drew Brees if teams adjust to the Saints and they start shutting down that run, Drew Brees, and if Keenan Allen starts to go off, because you have to understand, the Kansas City Chiefs are starting to stink on offense. The Chargers have hope. The Chargers are actually competing for the playoffs right now, believe it or not. Despite their record, they're competing for the playoffs. The Raiders are horrible. The Chiefs started off fantastic, and now the Chiefs are sputtering downward. So, the Chargers have something to play for, the first time all year. Keenan, believe me not, Keenan Allen could be the second season, there's always that one player, the second half of the year, bang, they just take off with the races. Keenan Allen could be that guy. Last week was a great example of that. Over 28 fantasy points last week in standard league. And in PPR leagues, Keenan Allen is a machine when it comes to targets and reception. He's a machine. He gets targets. Anyway, if you got Dez Bryant and you're loaded at running backs and you got two decent wide receivers, I don't play Dez this week. But, look, I traded Keenan Allen. I benefited getting, nice quarterback in Russell Wilson. He's the number one rated quarterback in the league. But we all know it would have been Deshaun Watson if he didn't tear his knee. And I had Deshaun Watson, so that kind of sucked for me. And I was the idiot that did not pick up Carson Wentz, although I couldn't pick up Carson Wentz because I didn't have waiver wire priority, so it didn't matter anyway. What did it matter to me? So I had pretty much draft my team and trade for stuff that I got. I'm the only trade that happened in my league, by the way. So, again, you just have to make those aggressive trades, guys. Fix your rosters appropriately and just make those sound decisions. And, guys, and then just enjoy your Sundays and enjoy your Thanksgiving, okay? Because all you can do is just grab the information that you're presented with and make the best informed choice. And hopefully, in this hour and 23 minutes, I've given you that option where you're just making that informed choice and you're going, okay, look, this guy told me that they're the sixth best versus the run. I believe Alfred Morris and the Cowboys are going to rebound. I'm starting Alfred Morris. I didn't know that prior to listening to this guy. Now I listen to him. I didn't know that Alfred Morris was getting 5.1 yards per carry. And if you're bullish on the Cowboys this week versus the Chargers, boom, Alfred Morris could be a darn nice RB2. I could be eating my own words. Alfred Morris could go off and get 100 some odd yards and a touchdown, and I could be eating every word that I said about Alfred Morris. That could happen. Do I think that's likely? I don't think so. I just don't think so. It's just the Cowboys' offense right now. I just don't think so. I think what's going to happen is this is not going to be a high-scoring affair. And I don't know what the odds makers have, but the Cowboys can't be too heavily favored in this matchup, can they? I don't think they can. Are they even favored? I don't know. So, I don't know. Personally, if I had Dak Prescott and, I don't know. I'm not as bullish on the Cowboys this week as some experts are. Because I think they had like Dak Prescott, like a top 10 quarterback. I think I even seen on one thing where they had Dak Prescott like a top 6 quarterback this week, and I'm like, I don't know. Maybe they're looking at different stats than I do, but but I'm just saying, I don't see it there. I actually think the Chargers are a streaming defense to play versus the Cowboys this week. That's how I see it. I'm like, stream the Charger defense if you can. So I'm not as bullish on the Cowboys. But again, I'm going to be wrong with one of these things. I'm banking on Dez Bryant having a game. Nothing spectacular, but could Dez get 6 catches, 80-some-odd yards, and get into the end zone? Yeah, I think something like that. So can Dez get you 13, 14 fantasy points this week? Yeah. Do you want that on your bench? No. And it's not, besides Antonio Brown and Adam Thielen and Keenan Allen's outburst last week, wide receivers haven't been that crazy this year. It's not the year of the quarterback. It's not the year of the wide receivers, really. It's been a balanced year. Actually, if anything, defenses and kickers have been playing a huge role in this year's fantasy league. So it's been an odd year. It's been very, very odd because typically, it's a year of the wide receivers or the quarterbacks. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, it was running backs. Now it's like, So thank your lucky stars if you picked up Alvin Kamara when Dalvin Cook tore his knee. I couldn't do that. I tried to get him. Like I started off 4-0. What do you want me to do? I didn't have waiver priority. So every running back that I put in claims for, it's like rejected. Somebody else had the waiver. Rejected. Somebody else got the waiver. Reject. I was like, oh gosh, thanks. So that's when I finally realized, guys, you have to look 2 weeks ahead and say, all right, you know what? I'm going to have to take Alfred Morris before anybody else does. I can't wait till waivers and to find out what's happening with Ezekiel Elliott. I have to make my move now. When I picked up Alex Collins, that could be a bust too. I don't know. I just said I have to pick him up because I don't know. Danny Woodhead's coming back, but who cares? You have to have that type of thinking sometimes. That's either going to win. That's either going to win me or lose me. And I'm willing to lose fantasy games based upon informational decisions. Okay? It's always nice to have luck. Trust me. It's always I'd rather be lucky. I'd rather win the lottery than have to get a doctoral degree. But I don't think I'm going to win the lottery, so right now, yeah, I'm in college with a science degree studying biology and healthcare because I don't believe I'm going to hit the lottery. But it doesn't mean I won't still play the lottery. So what I'm trying to say is just make an informed choice, sit back, relax. I gave you an hour or more of information. Take that for what you will and enjoy your holidays. If I post this video up midday or a little bit late, like maybe if this doesn't get uploaded till Saturday, I'm so sorry because you're going to be listening to this and going, what the? I'll try to get this uploaded for you. All right.